Well, hello and good evening. Welcome to Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. This is Sandy, and I live in two different places. So I have suburban homesteads in both Wyoming and in Arizona. And tonight we're going to talk about, are you running towards a dream or away from your life? Are you running away from life? Really? So you've decided, oh, I'm going to be a homesteader. And so all my problems will be solved. Well, let's talk about that tonight. Because sometimes you don't really want chickens. You just want to have that peace that you believe you can have on a homestead versus your life. Sometimes you don't want to have land. You just want the quiet. Because I tell you, our world can be very, very loud. It's just in your face. It's visual overload. Sometimes you don't even want goats. You just really got to figure out some way to have relief. Now, tonight we're going to explore whether you're running towards a meaningful life or you're running away from something you probably need to face. Now, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from being a homesteader or a suburban homesteader. I have so enjoyed this life. But about, I don't know, it was a little while ago, not too long ago, I went through on my YouTube channel. You subscribe to different people, you watch their videos, and over on the left side of your screen, it has all these different channels that you subscribe to. So I just decided I'd go through some. So actually, I went through the whole list, looking for people that I used to watch all the time, and then they just never popped up anymore. And there were channel after channel after channel. Hi, Matthew. How are you? Thank you for coming in. That they hadn't put a video out in 2 years, 4 years. There was no sign of them doing anything. Not that they still couldn't be a homesteader, but they weren't doing YouTube videos anymore for whatever reason. But then I saw ones that, their goodbye videos, that this really wasn't for us. We thought it was, but it really wasn't. So before you sell everything, before you give up your entire life and decide to move to the country, let's talk about why you want to do that. So Matthew is in, and Phil back. Hello, hello. How are you guys tonight? And I can see there's other people watching, but they're not in the chat. So why do people, I guess, run to be a homesteader? Why do they want to change their entire life and be a homesteader? Well, probably one of the main reasons is burnout. This modern world that we live in, it's just, they're physically burnt out from the day to day to day. And so they yearn to have that land, that feel of that soil. And I think that's logical. I think that happens, that maybe it's even a little innate within us that we want to be back to the soil. I know I love that. But that constant stimulation in our modern world can just really weigh on people after a while. So they want to be a homesteader. They want to have some land. They want to move away from everything. And Penny Ortiz, hello, my friend. How are you? Sometimes they think there's a lot of financial pressures. You have a house that's too big. You have cars that you really can't afford. You think that when you live in the city, you have to keep up with the Jones, and your kids have to be in 15 different activities. And I think it just can be craziness. Anne says, I ran to the rural because the traffic lights and the traffic, and I wanted a big garden. So you got to have good reasons. Where I used to spend the summers at my grandma's farm, there was no traffic lights in the entire town. She lived out of town, but you'd go into town, there was a couple stop signs, but there was not a traffic light in sight. It's very slower. Some people will love that. Some people will think they will love that, but maybe they won't. So before you sell everything, I think it's so important because I hear people and I talk to people all the time. I just got to have some land. But have you started doing all those things right where you are to see if you really like that kind of stuff? Sometimes, um, sometimes you go through an emotional thing. Maybe it's grief, a death, a divorce, some kind of trauma, and you just can't live where you were. You got to have a change. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just want you to be aware before you upend not just probably your life, everybody else's life. You know, you may be married or have children or grandchildren. Um, think about those things beforehand. Sometimes we think that we will have more control in our life if we're homesteaders. Maybe that's true. Uh, but I think maybe part of that is that a lot of us work at jobs that you don't really see any tangible effect of what you do. You know, these are your goals at your job, do this, do this, do this, but you never see the end product. And sometimes there's no physical end product. It's mergers, it's acquisitions. It can be a lot of things. Sometimes people want to be a homesteader because they long for that slower pace in life, more meaningful work. And in itself, most of these things are not bad. But what homesteading actually is, and Anne and Penny and Matthew will probably agree with me, and the rest of you guys in the chat. Being a homesteader can be very hard physical work. It's lots of early mornings, it's lots of late nights, and the more things you put on your homestead, either as a suburban homesteader or a homesteader with acreage, the more animals or bigger gardens or beehives, all these things in themselves, they don't seem like they'll take a lot of time, but they do take a lot of time. Even at my suburban homestead, homestead, here maybe not as much in Arizona, but when I'm in Wyoming, there's just a lot of things to do besides the rest of your life, you know, but just quote unquote homesteading things to do. You're very weather dependent. You got to feed those animals when it's cold, when it's icy, when it's raining, when it's 100 degrees. And when you live in a big place, a big city, or even a halfway decent sized city, there's always activities. So you may not ever feel lonely, but as a homesteader, you can feel lonely. You know, you can't go any place for a while. It can be lonely. It's just one of those things. Anne says, you have to love what you do and love where you live, even in the bad times. And that's true. And that's not if you're a homesteader, a suburban homesteader, if you're a city person. You have to be content where you are. Then you can always move. Because if you're angry living in the city, you're still, and you haven't resolved problems. When you got your 5-acre homestead, you're still an angry person. It's not like it goes away. You have to work out those things. Because I would like more and more and more people to become homesteaders. I do. It's a fabulous thing to do. But you got to do it for the right reasons. And you got to go in with your eyes wide open. Caution lights, 2-lane roads, no cell phone, and no Walmart. go on at 88 miles per hour. See, it's good that everybody is different and different things that they need. But if you go to a rural community, you, you know, if a Walmart may be an hour or more away, you have to just realize those things. Um, a lot of times when you move to a homestead, you have your savings. Hopefully, you have some kind of savings backup. But there can be some real financial uncertainties, I guess I would say, when you first do it. Monica, hey Sandy, hey chat, listening in while I'm cooking dinner. Monica, what are you making us for dinner? So good. Monica is a good cook. I think that homesteading can be one of the richest, most rewarding things that you will ever do in your life. But that doesn't mean it's easy. You just have to know that. And that's okay. Life does not have to be easy. I know that we seem to think that it is. It's supposed to be, but I don't know who ever decided that. But I like the rhythm of a homestead. You know, that you get used to, these are the things I do this morning. I do this and this and this, and there's a rhythm. And there's a rhythm with the seasons, and I'm busier during this time of the year than I am this time of the year. And he says, living way out here in pure country that offers lots of land, you have to be 100% dedicated to hard work day in and day out. So true, Penny. And Monica is making burgers, homemade rolls, and some air fryer fries for most of the family. SD pizza for Eric. Awesome. I love it that Monica will make a different thing for Eric. You know, if it's something that he's not eating, like, you know, that Eric doesn't eat regular chicken eggs, but he eats duck eggs. He can eat duck eggs, but not chicken eggs. So every family has some stuff. So, I am making chili dogs tonight. After my live, we're having chili dogs, and then we were going to go play bingo. 2 weeks ago, I won the big pot, $36. Joe won last week, but he had to split it because 2 people won, and he only got $9. Wasn't as many people. It's just a little thing by where we live. You know, it's not a lot of people. It's very fun, and it doesn't really have anything to do with bingo, but they still call it bingo. I think when you're homesteader, there is a lot of satisfaction. Physically, you see your accomplishments over and over and over again, and I like that. That's right, Matthew. You got to get into a rhythm, and really any place, no matter where you live, if you can get into a rhythm of your life is better. If you can see the seasons and take that with you, life can be better. I love the fact that when you're on a homestead or a suburban homestead, the seasons have more meaning to you because there's things that are done in certain seasons. And so that rhythm is just throughout the year, and I really, really enjoy that. It's very purpose-driven work, you know. You even just with gardening, it's very purpose-driven, you know. But you see results in that season. You're going to see results, and that can be very satisfying. You have some more food security. I mean, if you grow a big garden, you can preserve those vegetables. You get to eat all that fresh, and then you can preserve vegetables, and that can be very great when it comes to security. If you have animals, that's just another layer of your food security. Now, isolation can be very hard for people, and it can, I think, amplify being lonely. Your financial stress might increase, and a lot of homesteaders have regular jobs too, and so they're driving into town. It'd be nice that if you're a homesteader, you can just live off the land like Little House on the Prairie. But even them, the dad had to go places sometimes to work. If your whole family is not on board, it can be very stressful in your marriage, in your family life. So that could be a con. If you become a homesteader because of this romantic view of Little House on the Prairie, I have to tell you that more than likely you will crash. And that's a sad thing, because being a homesteader in the suburbs, or actually you could be a homesteader in the city. I mean, people do it. They work around their situation and they do it. But you have to, I always say this, your eyes wide open. You have to really know why you're doing it. Your emotional issues will follow you. If you haven't resolved things, issues that you have while you're in the city, when you move, they're coming with you. So you just gotta work it. We do not want to face issues. It's a fact that most people, we just don't want to. Okay, questions for you. What exactly am I trying to escape from? You guys in the chat, you can answer things like this. If you're thinking about being a homesteader, am I doing it to escape from something? Or am I doing it because that's the type of rich life I want? Those are things to ask yourself. It can be pros, it can be cons, it can be, it can be issues. Have you tried to address those issues right where you are? If you got a lot of anger issues, now you may be able to work some of those out digging in the dirt. I mean, I always say that pulling weeds is better than therapy. But oh, the chat's talking about SD sourdough. I was having a mental block. Yeah, I assumed it was sourdough. I'm sorry, I should have said something. If you don't want to do it, I wouldn't do it. If I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't do it. Because Anne has moved out of the city. Just do the math, do an emotional check of yourself, do emotional check of your family. If you drag a bunch of teenage kids that do not want to be on a homestead out there, seriously, you're going to have issues. Because they're just so used to, oh, we're going to so-and-so's. It's 2 blocks down the road. Well, now all of a sudden you're 15, 20 miles an hour out of town. And that short little trip is no longer a short little trip. And a lot of times, who is driving that person to do those activities? Okay, question for you. Are you running towards a purpose? Are you running because of all the great things of being a homesteader? Or are you running away from some kind of pain? Now, eventually, some people that move to the homestead because of just things that are happening in their lives, they work around it and they become this great homesteader. But it's a lot of pain that you're going through before you figure all that stuff out. Monica says, we left the suburbs when our oldest was 14, 12, and 10. That was crazy, but thankfully they adapted well. You have to know your family. You have to know your kids. Is this something that they can adapt to? Is this something they can learn to love? Are you willing to do all that driving back into town because of the benefits of being a homesteader? Matthew says, I can get some yard work done angry. Weed whacker stuff, be flying. Riding mower therapy, solving problems. Well, see, these things are true. I mean, if I'm mad, I'm pulling weeds. It's just a great therapy for me. Do you really want this homesteading lifestyle? Or is it just some kind of dream fantasy thing that it just looks so idyllic to live on a homestead? You just have to figure out if these things are right for you. It was such a benefit for them and their futures. I can see that now, and I'm so glad we listened to the Lord's nudge. Perfect. And Monica has the greatest kids. It's just amazing. Penny says, one one way thing that can do to help with living with a lot of daily chores off myself is to offer to a local high school for a junior or senior to receive extra credits to graduate. There are some areas in the country that have programs like this, and kids can come out and do work at a homestead, at somebody suburban homestead, actually in the city even, and they can get actual credits to that help with their graduation because of the work that they're doing. And I really like that some communities are doing that. Anne says, yes, teaching your kids better values too. My grown kids with family have gardens now and chickens. Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, my dad grew up on a farm. He didn't want to ever be on a farm again, right? I mean, we went down to my grandma's farm, but he didn't want to be a farmer. He didn't want that life at all. All of his children want to be farmers. And maybe it's because we had such a great experiences at my grandparents' farm. All of us have gardens. All of us have bees. It's really interesting. And even my dad, he still has a garden. He's 94 years old and he still has a little tiny garden. He didn't want to be a farmer, but he still liked that gardening part. Kind of gets in you. There was a time in my life that I could have bought my grandma's farm. She had passed away. My grandfather had passed away years before that, but she passed away. And my dad had the farm, and he offered it to me, 40 acres, $18,000, the house, the barns, the outbuildings. But I was a single parent at the time. And I went down there a couple times. I went back and forth, if I could do it. And I didn't. I said no. I've regretted that decision my whole life. Ever since then, as soon as I told him no, and he sold it to a neighbor farmer, it was like I should have done it. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I just always felt that way. Another question for you. So you want to become a homesteader. Are you prepared to have several years of learning? Because just watching YouTube videos or reading books, they can help, but it doesn't prepare you to be a homesteader. You have to do the work when you get there. It's trial and error and failure and great things, and it's just a process. Are you willing to take several years till all of a sudden you go, wow, I'm a homesteader. Wow, I've got to that point that it's like, this is good for us. Anne says, my grandfather was a farmer. His son that was my dad served in the Air Force. The Air Force, the retired, and became a farmer like his dad. Oh, he was in the Air Force, then retired. When my dad retired, well, actually, even a few years before he retired, they did buy property and moved a house onto it. So he had bigger garden. He didn't have chickens. He didn't have rabbits. He didn't have those things, but he did have a garden. And I mean, the geese and the deer and stuff came around and he'd feed them. But he didn't want to be a farmer. He didn't want to be a homesteader. But those are just choices people do. Us Great Family Farm is here. Hello, how are ya? So we're asking questions about being a homesteader. And we talked about this a little bit before. Is your partner, your husband, wife, partner, willing to be a homesteader? You can't be a homesteader and drag people kicking and screaming. You will not be happy. They will not be happy. Are you guys connected? Do you both want to do this? Do your kids want to do this? Can you start where you are right now? Okay, so you're in the city or you're in the suburbs. You want to be a homesteader. What can you do right now? What skills can you learn? Can you garden right now? Is there city plots that you can use to garden right now? Can you start looking for your perfect homestead? I don't want you to move, sell everything, move across the country, get to this little homestead, and after a year or two, it's like, what did we do? Because you weren't ready, you weren't prepared. And I have just seen and heard people lately that was the issue. Our world is craziness. It's true. It's just true. But the world is crazy all the time. It's been crazy for 6,000 years. There has always been ups and downs and changes in governments and changes in countries. I've always believed, I read this article years ago. I have a copy of it in my purse from years ago. And it was all about why poor people survive no matter what happens. Why do they? Why do they survive when there's government changes, there's wars, there's rumors of wars, there's devastation, there's natural calamities? Why is it that poor people survive when everybody else is in chaos? The whole article got down to why, because they're willing to pick up sticks. And you might go, what does that mean? But it really means that they're willing to do the day in and day out and pick up sticks if they have to make a fire and cook their meals. And they're willing to do those things that a homesteader does. And so I've always kept that, because sometimes if I think I'm getting too big for my britches, it's like, are you willing to pick up sticks? Are you willing to do the hard work, to be out there when you don't feel like feeding the chickens or checking on your bees or doing your garden or weeding or taking care of your bigger animals, replacing fences, pruning trees, doing all the things a homesteader does? Because they don't just have a garden. They have to decide how and what they're going to do with all that produce. You know, you can't just eat it all right then. Are you willing to learn those skills? If you are, you can have the most wonderful life as a homesteader. I mean, seriously, it can be the best life you've ever could have dreamed of. But you have to decide, because homesteading can be almost a calling. It can be one of those things that can just so help you and others. And that's why I love homesteaders that have YouTube channels, because they share and they're real. And they'll show you that when they just blew it or they couldn't do something, and they give you ideas. But homesteading is not an eraser. If you have problems in the city and you haven't dealt with them, you will have problems in the homestead. And you can't leave the city because you want to change, you can't deal with all the things in the city, and then go to the country and decide, oh, the country should be like the city. It will not go over well with other homesteaders and farmers and ranchers because you're coming to their space. You don't get to decide. I see this in Wyoming. Um, since COVID, they have lots of people from both coasts have moved to Wyoming for the American dream, I guess. But what I have started to see is all of a sudden they don't really want to live like Wyomingites. They want to have their big city twisted there. It doesn't go over well with people in Wyoming. I mean, seriously. I mean, Jackson Hole is very rich, and they have a whole different lifestyle than the rest of Wyoming. So just remember, when you're going out to be a homesteader, assimilate yourself into that community because you need people. I don't care what other, people will say, I don't need anybody. I don't like people. I don't need, I can just do whatever I want. Well, excuse me, you're moving into their community. You're going to start your homestead. You need those people because there'll be times that things break down. You want to go someplace. Somebody's got to feed your animals. You need to be able to ask those people, but you need to be able to do those things for them also. It is, it's not like the city. Like, you may never know your neighbors in the city, but you better know your neighbors in the country. So it's just one of those things to think about. And I don't want to discourage anybody from being a homesteader because it is a life worth living. It is this continuous learning process, but make sure you're doing it all for the right reasons. So, tomorrow night, Friday night, I have a new challenge for you. But in the month of March, my lives Monday morning at 9:30 and my lives on Thursday night at 5 o'clock are going to be a little bit different. And we are just going to dive in to things about homesteads and gardens and life and planning, and it's going to be so much fun. And I'm actually going to see if I can get some experts on certain areas to come in, and so it won't be just me. So everybody have a great evening. Gonna go make Joe some chili hot dogs, and then we're gonna play a little bingo. So everybody have a wonderful, blessed day. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you next time.